Hello again and welcome to another episode of the Division of Education, Innovation and Energy's e-learning program. My name is Kimarie Richardson Thomas and we're going to continue our exploration of expository writing, and today we're going to focus on notices. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to define and provide examples of notices, determine the format of a notice, write a notice given a specified prompt, and respond to multiple choice questions based on a notice. But exactly what is a notice? We may be aware of what notices are in terms of seeing them stuck up in certain places, but let's look at a carefully articulated definition of a notice. A notice is a written or printed announcement. It is written in order to inform a large number of people about something that has happened or is about to happen, so that what you're writing about in a notice can be something that has already taken place, or you want to let folks know, you want to let people know, let a community, a group of individuals know about something that is expected to happen. It could be an upcoming event, a competition, lost and found notice, or just a piece of information to be delivered to the targeted audience. And paying attention to this part here, when we talk about our notice, we want to understand that there's always going to be a target audience. And when you write a notice, you have to be aware of audience. And any type of writing that you're doing, you have to be aware of audience. The notice is also generally written in a formal tone. When we talk about our expository writing is usually utilizing a formal tone. Notices are factual and to the point. The language used is simple and formal, not flowery. So we're not expecting to find too many of our similes and metaphors and our literary devices in our formal expository writing, especially in the notice. Notices will not have these literary devices. They are put up on display boards in schools or in public places. Types of notices. You can have notices that are geared towards informing individuals about a competition, an excursion, lost and found notices, an inauguration that can take place, and even at the school level you can have an inauguration which would involve the installation of let's say your student council executive. You can have the installation of the executive for any other club that you may have, and you want to let the rest of the student population know that this installation, known as an inauguration, will take place. You can have a notice about an exhibition, a blood donation camp to be held, or any other type of event or information that you want to issue for public notification. The format of a notice. A notice should contain all the necessary details, such as the name of the issuing agency, if it's a school, if it's a council, a club. You want to talk about the date of the issue or the release of the notice, when it is this notice was sent out. So the date of the issuing of the notice has to be on the notice. The title or subject of the event. What is this notice about? Are you beginning to see some similarities between this and what we discussed earlier in terms of our emails and our letters? So your title or subject. You want the body of the notice, the date, time, duration, place, venue, your when and where. What is this event about is your subject, and then the body would provide the details, your when and where of this event. And then there's the authorized signatory, the name and signature with contact details of who has sent it out. Now, there have been examples of notices that go out without the authorized signatory. And usually it's because it's understood that the name of the issuing agency, so you may not always find the authorized signatory. Sometimes it may be omitted because it's understood that if you're seeing here, the issuing agency, it tells you who this is coming from. So let's see how to make some sense out of this when we talk about the actual format of a notice, and we'll go through this step by step. The format of the notice, we talk about the name of the issuing agency, and that goes at the top of your notice. It's usually top center. Top center, who this is coming from. The agency, the organization, the body. Below that, you're going to have highlighted the word notice. If you're going to actually write a notice, you can write this in bold or in capital letters, sorry. Write it in capital letters, or you can underline it. Then we have here the date of issue or the release of the notice. You put in your top left-hand corner the date of this notice when it was sent out. Then we go back to the middle of the page, the subject of the event. Again, this can be for the purposes of writing. You can underline this or write it in capital letters. Where we are using, if you're going to use your laptop or your computer or any other electronic device, then you can highlight it and make it bold. Then we talk now about the body of the notice. What is it? What are the details about this notice? The date, time, duration, and place. You put that into the body, and then again, your authorized signatory with the name, designation, and signature. As indicated, some notices may not include it. Some official notices may not have this element, and I want you to be aware of it. But if you're doing it for the purposes of your exam, you're being advised, if you're going to write it, include the authorized signatory, the name of the person, designation, and signature. So, this is an actual notice that came from the Ministry of Works and Transport. It's a public notice, and we're going to see how those elements of the notice are applicable here. So from the Ministry of Works and Transport, we see here that this is the name of our issuing agency. We have our issuing agency, it's their corporate communication unit. And they have also included the address, telephone contact, and email addresses for their communication, their corporate communication unit. But at the top, very official, with the coat of arms, the name of the issuing agency. Secondly, we have our actual notice. This notice is actually a media release. And a media release is a notice that is sent out to your electronic and print media, your television stations, radio stations, well, not necessarily the radio stations for purposes of print. The radio stations would have a recording or someone actually reading out the information. But for your print media and your visual media, television and newspapers, your media release is that type of notice. Then we have here the date of issue. The date of issue, and as I said before, this is an actual media release, and it was released on the 9th of April 2020. Following, we have the subject of the notice. The subject of the notice is the extended closure of all licensing offices and 5-month moratorium on driver's permit renewals. So that we have in our center there, the subject of our notice as stipulated in terms of the format for our notices. Then we have the body. The body of this notice carries the information related to date, time, venue, or location. It says the Ministry of Works and Transport wishes to advise the general public that further to the extension of the stay-at-home measures announced by Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, to curtail the spread of COVID-19 nationally, the closure of all Transport Division offices licensing has been extended until further notice. The ministry also takes this opportunity to remind all holders of driver's permits, taxi driver's license, badge, certificate, or other documents issued by the licensing division which expire during the period March 27th to 31st July 2020 shall be deemed valid until 31st August 2020 or such later date as the Minister of Works and Transport may specify. The ministry thanks citizens for their cooperation and understanding during this time. So you have in the body a date that you need to be aware of. In this case, the date here is that these documents that may expire during the period March 27th to July 31st are valid until the 31st of August. And the notice will usually have a date that you have to pay attention to. So what we want you to be able to do is to take a picture of it. Take a picture with your smartphones so that you can save the information as we go through and as we go back to it. So you have your date. There is really no time other than the date, and the venue here is just general for all citizens who this would apply to. So this is our body. This particular media release did not have a complimentary clause on a signatory with a designation. Again, because if we look at the name of the issuing agency, our issuing agency has the name of who this information is coming from. This is another example of a notice, and I just wanted you to be able to see the structure. This is one that came from the Ministry of Education earlier this year in relation to their NEC examinations. And again, you have your issuing body, you have notice. This one did not indicate a date of issue. And additionally, this particular notice does not have a complimentary clause, but it says notice at the top to get the attention of the members of the public that the information would apply to, and we're seeing who this one came from. So what are some points for us to remember? When you're doing a notice, repetition of any information should be avoided. Do not repeat information. We're keeping it to the point, straight to the point. Keep your notices short, crisp, to the point. Highlight the word notice, or if it is title, so you can either put it in bold or underline it. The title should be captivating and eye-catching. So that your subject, whatever it is, whoever is looking at the notice, they must be able to say, wait, this is information that I need. Because very often what happens with a notice, people are walking past. If this notice is on a notice board, they're walking past and there must be something to catch their eye. Do not make hypothetical information or facts. Don't put in things that are not necessary for your notice. Make use of what is given in the question that's being presented to you. However, you can use additional information that may be relevant for your specific notice, especially for your exam. Make sure you do not mention your personal information. Personal information is not required when you're writing for the exam again. Don't put in your personal information about where you live, your date of birth. Leave those things out. Make use of all the available information in the question. The question will indicate to you what you're required to write. Make use of all of that information. Also understand that for your answer, you want to utilize your 5 W's. Your what, why, when, where, and who. Check these off as you write your notice. Have you indicated all of that relevant information for your 5 W's? The purpose for which it is being written should be stated clearly. This becomes your subject. Your subject should be stated very clearly why you're writing. You have your subject and you get into the body. What is the purpose? You want to focus on presentation and clarity. Presentation, clarity. To the point, don't go overboard. Don't over-elaborate. So let's look at some practice and how this would apply if you're given a notice. If you are given a notice for your exam. If you are given a notice and you're doing paper 2. Paper 2 examples of a notice for the exam would occur in section 2, and it usually does not have a specified word limit. We don't have a specified word limit, but you want to have enough content to give you your marks. And those marks, we're looking at 30 marks. So if you have your paper 2, you're looking at section 2 that may give you the option for a notice. And this is what it can look like. So let's take a look. Section B, suggested time 30 minutes, and it will tell you you must answer this question. There are no options here. It's not either or. If you're getting your paper 2 and you have a section B, your paper 2, you must answer it. So a possibility that you can be presented with would be, study the situation presented below, then answer the question that follows. You are the outgoing president of your school student council. Elections for the new executive is scheduled for Friday, 25th June 2020 at 10 a.m. at your school's auditorium. The following positions on the executive will be available: President, Vice President, Treasurer, Secretary, Public Relations Officer. Students need to be informed that the President of the Student Council must be a fifth form student. Further, students must vote for a candidate for every position available. I'm reminding you again, take a picture. Let's get a screenshot of this. And as you do that, I want to also inform you, this was actually the question that came for the January 2020 exam. All I've modified would have been the date so that we could make it a little more current. But this was the January 2020 exam question in section B of paper 2. So having taken your screenshot, we continue. Write a notice that will be placed on the student's notice board. In your answer, you will be assessed on how well you format your notice, select relevant and complete information, organize and express the information in your notice, use appropriate grammar, sentence structure, vocabulary, spelling, and punctuation. Your notice must be in continuous prose. Make sure to include all the relevant details in the notice so that students will be fully informed of the elections. 30 marks. Again, this is the paper, this was the question, an actual question, and we're going to see how best this can be responded to. We begin first of all with the issuing body. Who is sending out the notice? The issuing body. So our issuing body in this case, and we're making it up, Castara High School Student Council. So we're using a fictional secondary school here in Tobago. Then we're going to put in notice. And again, note, I want you to pay attention. This information is at the middle of our screen, the middle of our paper, the middle of the page, top middle. Castara High School Student Council notice. Then you're going to have your date of issue. Our date of issue. And I know that I'm writing a lot on the screen as we're doing this because I want you to see the steps as we go. After you've written your date of issue in the top left, you want your subject. The subject of this notice, the subject, Student Council Elections 2020. This is, I've put it in capital letters and I've also underlined it because it has to stand out. Then you want the body of your information. The body of your notice says, the term of office of the current Student Council Executive of Castara High School comes to an end on Friday, 5th June 2020. Consequently, nominations for the new executive will open on Monday, 8th June 2020, and elections will take place on Friday, 25th June 2020 at 10 a.m. at the school's auditorium. Listed below are the positions available on the Student Council Executive, President, Vice President, Treasurer, Secretary, Public Relations Officer. In addition, students are reminded that the post of Student Council President must be held by a Form 5 student, and a vote must be cast for one candidate in every position available. The body of the notice contains all of the information that had been listed in the original prompt. All of the information that you were asked to put into the notice, it's contained within the body here. And at the end of the notice, at the end of our notice, what we have is a signature, name, and designation of the individual who's writing on behalf of the Student Council. So we have the signature of the Student Council President, David Caesar, and his designation. And we see here the format for our notice. You can take a screenshot of this one as well. So let's take a look at how all of this applies to multiple choice for your paper 1. Your paper 1 exam, if you do your paper 1 exam and you have a notice for your exam, it will come under your comprehension. It's going to be in the form of your comprehension. So if we look at that same notice that we did on Castara High School, it asks which of the following is not a purpose of the notice. To inform students of Castara High School of the date and time of the upcoming elections, to indicate the positions available on the Student Council Executive, to remind students that only fifth formers are eligible to run for the position of president, to persuade students to run for executive positions on the Student Council. So which of the following is not a purpose of the notice? Two things you're going to pay attention to in a question like this. First of all, you want to go back to your actual notice, the one that I asked you to take a screenshot of, and you try to identify which of any of these would have been information directly within the body of your notice. But this one becomes tricky, because when we look at the notice, the original notice informed the students of the date and time of the upcoming election. The original notice also indicated the positions. The original notice also reminded students that only fifth formers are eligible to run for the position of president. The original notice indicated the executive position, but what it did not do was try to persuade. And you have to know this because expository writing is not written to persuade. That's a different type of writing. So from the time you see anything indicating to persuade or to entertain, it has taken away from the purpose of expository writing. Expository writing is always to inform. So the fact that one of our options says persuade, we can remove it. In fact, we can indicate that that is not a purpose of the notice. So our answer here is D. Another option, another possible question. How much time would students have between the opening of nominations and election day? I want you again to look at your screenshot of your notice from Castara High School Student Council. And our options here are 14 days, 21 days, 16 days, and 17 days. And it asks how much time would students have between the opening of nominations and election day. So that the nominations will open on the 8th of June Nominations will open on the 8th of June, and then elections will take place on the 29th of June. You have to pay attention to, it says how much time would students have between the opening of the nominations and the election day. If you check the number of days between, and this is where your math skills would come in, the number of days between the 8th and the 29th, the between will give you 16 days. but you also have to include the 8th of June because that is also going to be a day for the nomination. So it's 16 days plus 1. 16 days plus 1. That gives us 17 days. So our answer will be D. Again, all of your subject areas will come into play when you're doing your English A exams. This notice is an example of narrative writing, expository writing, persuasive writing, or descriptive writing. Here's an example of why we're taking our time to go through these different types of writing so you'll know specifically what kind of writing this is. And throughout all of our engagement with this lesson, we have been stressing that notices are a type of expository writing. Which of the following might be a plausible reason for the writer's use of the phrase, students are reminded? And this is a phrase used in the notice. However, the answer is not going to be found within the actual passage. It is calling for you to draw a conclusion based on the information presented. You need to draw a logical conclusion. So why it is the writer may use the phrase, students are reminded? He believes students might be forgetful. Students may have been informed before. C, all notices must have a reminder. Or D, the student council secretary told him to remind the students. Usually when an instruction goes out saying you are reminded or please be reminded, it's usually an indication that the information went out before and they want to remind you a second or a third time. So this phrase is usually an indication that a reminder went out before. That not a reminder, but the information went out before, so you're now being reminded. Hence, our answer here would be D. We look at one more sample before we come to an end today, and it says the tone of the writer can be described as. And questions on tone and mood are very, very crucial, and I want you to be able to understand the language associated with tone and mood. The tone of the writer can be described as formal, haughty, critical, or urgent. And if you can recall, as we did our lesson today, we spoke repeatedly about the kind of tone and the kind of language that's required for our expository writing. And the tone that is used for our notices falls under the category of formal. Expository writing always utilizes a formal tone. As we wrap up today, and we looked at our notices, as we end this lesson, students have been able to define and provide examples of notices, determine the format of a notice, write a notice given a specified prompt, and respond to multiple choice questions based on a notice. So, in our next lesson, we're going to look at reports. So as we go, once again, I want to say thank you for joining me here for CSEC English A on the Tobago House of Assembly, Division of Education, Innovation and Energy e-learning program.